The Apache Girl stood alone at the edge of the dirt, rode as the sun bled into the horizon, turning the sky the color of old fire. Dust clung to her worn dress and her feet were bare, cracked from days of walking. When the rancher pulled his horse to a stop, she didn't look up right away. She seemed to be listening to the wind, to the land, to something only she could hear. Then she spoke, her voice low and steady, as if she had already accepted the answer to a question she hadn't asked. "No man wants me." Ethan Cole hadn't planned on stopping. He lived miles from the nearest town for a reason. After years of silence and solitude, he trusted open land more than people. But something in the way she stood there, not begging, not demanding, just existing, made him swing down from his saddle. He offered her his canteen. She drank carefully, like someone who had learned not to trust kindness too quickly. Her dark eyes never stopped moving, scanning the plains behind him, the trees, the fading light. "Where are you headed?" he asked. She hesitated. "Anywhere that isn't behind me." That answer should have been enough to make him ride on. Instead, he pointed toward his ranch, a low wooden house barely visible in the distance. "You can rest there, just for the night." She followed at a careful distance, as if ready to run. When they reached the ranch, she paused at the gate, fingers tightening around a small leather pouch tied to her waist. "I won't cause trouble," she said quietly. "I won't stay long." Inside, she ate like someone who didn't know when the next meal would come. She thanked him in Apache, her accent soft but deliberate. When he showed her the spare room, she asked where the exits were, then apologized for asking. Ethan noticed the thin scars on her wrists and the way her shoulders tensed at every distant sound. That night, the plains were restless. Coyotes howled close and the wind rattled the windows. Ethan woke to the sound of whispering. The Apache Girl was speaking in her sleep, her words sharp and urgent like warnings. When a shadow passed outside the window, her hand moved beneath the blanket with practiced speed, as if reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. By morning, she was awake before dawn, standing at the fence and staring east. Ethan realized then that she wasn't running toward something new. She was running from something that hadn't stopped following her. Naya didn't leave. Days passed, each stretching longer than the last, and she settled into the rhythms of the ranch as though she had been there all her life. She rose before the sun, feeding the horses, mending fences, and tending the small garden Ethan had planted years ago. Her hands were quick and sure, her movements precise, and Ethan watched her with a mix of awe and unease. There was a skill in everything she did that spoke of a life far removed from the quiet solitude of his ranch. When she rode the horses, it was as if she was part of them, her body moving with theirs, balanced and fearless. When she tracked a wounded deer through the woods, Ethan saw her follow the faintest signs, broken twigs, displaced stones, a subtle scent on the wind, and he realized she could vanish into the land, if she wanted to. Despite her quiet presence, Naya remained a mystery. She told him stories of her people, of Apache warriors and women who survived with courage and cunning, but she never told him her own story. Ethan tried not to pry, sensing the weight of her silence, and yet he could not ignore the scars she carried, faint lines on her arms that spoke of old battles and old pain. One morning, as sunlight spilled into the barn, he said gently, "You don't have to explain." "Not to me." For a moment, relief softened her face, but a flicker of guilt lingered behind her eyes, a shadow that refused to leave. Then the strangers came. Ethan noticed them first, a trio of riders far across the prairie, moving slowly, deliberately, as if marking territory. Naya froze the instant she saw them, her eyes widening, her body stiff with tension. "They won't stop," she whispered, barely audible, her voice tight with fear. Ethan felt the blood drain from his face, but he reached for his rifle without hesitation. "Who are they?" he asked. She shook her head, her lips pressed together. "If they find me here, they'll kill you too," she said, the words a weight he could feel pressing into his chest. That night, she tried to slip away under the cover of darkness, moving quietly toward the edge of the ranch. Ethan intercepted her at the gate, his heart pounding with both anger and concern. "You don't owe me anything," he said softly. "But if you're in danger, you don't have to face it alone." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "They don't want me alive," she murmured. "And anyone who helps me dies too." He took her hand gently, firm and unwavering. "Then they'll have to go through me first," he said. And for the first time, Naya allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could be safe. The shot never came, but the warning lingered in the air like smoke. By morning, the riders were gone, their presence leaving nothing but churned earth and a burned symbol etched into the ranch fence. Ethan noticed it first, the blackened mark curling ominously across the wood. Naya collapsed to her knees, her hands trembling as she traced the scorched lines with fingertips that had never been meant for gentle touch. "I should never have come here," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm not just unwanted. I'm hunted." Ethan knelt beside her, unsure what words could pierce the weight of the fear that clung to her. Finally, she spoke the truth she had held for so long, the secret she had carried alone across deserts, mountains, and endless plains. She was not merely a girl without a place to belong. She was the last living witness to a massacre, an atrocity committed to erase her people and claim their land. She had seen faces, remembered names, and stolen evidence, proof that could destroy powerful men who would stop at nothing to protect their crimes. Ethan listened, silent as the gravity of her story settled between them. Her dark eyes, once wary and distant, now glimmered with a mixture of terror and determination. She unfastened the small leather pouch from her waist, showing him the papers and artifacts she had risked everything to carry. "If they get this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "they'll kill anyone who stands in my way." Ethan's mind raced, but his heart made a choice before his thoughts caught up. He pushed the pouch gently aside and let the fingers of his hand burn the ranch, brand into the dirt beside the scorched mark. "This land is mine," he said firmly, "and so is the choice to protect you." For the first time in years, Naya felt a strange, almost foreign sensation welling inside her. It was not fear, nor desperation, nor grief. It was belonging. She had trusted no one, had run from danger her entire life, yet here, on this quiet ranch far from towns and prying eyes, she had found someone willing to stand between her and a world determined to destroy her. Her knees lifted from the dirt, her hands steady for the first time in a long while. But even as relief washed over her, a new tension prickled the back of her neck. Far in the distance, beyond the hills and the plains, a man unfolded a map, his finger tracing the path to the ranch. "She's there," he said, his voice cold and resolute. "And this time, we finish it." Naya turned to Ethan, their eyes meeting in silent understanding. Whatever came next, she would not face it alone. And for the first time, she believed that together they might survive. The morning air was heavy with tension, the kind that presses against the chest and makes every breath feel sharp and deliberate. Naya moved quietly through the ranch, checking the fences, feeding the horses, and keeping a careful watch on the distant hills. She had always been alert, but now every shadow, every rustle in the grass made her heart race. Ethan noticed it too, the way her eyes constantly scanned the horizon, the way her hands hovered near the pouch at her waist as though expecting danger at any moment. He tried to speak, tried to offer some words of comfort, but she waved him off gently. "I can't relax," she admitted, her voice tight with tension. "Not yet. Not while they're out there." Ethan understood. He had lived alone long enough to know that some fears are rooted deep, impossible to shake. As the day wore on, the wind carried more than dust. Ethan spotted a plume of smoke in the distance, faint but unmistakable. His heart thumped in his chest. "Someone's coming," he said. Naya didn't flinch. She merely tightened her grip on the leather pouch and adjusted her stance, readying herself in a way that made Ethan both proud and uneasy. "We have to be smart," she said. "They'll try to take the evidence first. They won't care about anyone else." He nodded, realizing that for all her youth, she carried the wisdom of survival in her every gesture. They spent the afternoon fortifying the ranch. Ethan moved barrels and boards to create barricades, while Naya planned escape routes and hiding places. She whispered instructions in Apache, pointing out weak spots and unseen vantage points. By evening, the ranch looked less like a peaceful homestead and more like a stronghold. Despite the preparation, fear hung over them like a storm cloud, heavy and inescapable. Night fell, and the first sound of hooves echoed faintly in the distance. Naya and Ethan stood side by side, the firelight casting long shadows on their faces. She pulled the pouch close, the weight of her secret pressing against her chest, while Ethan loaded his rifle, his hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. When the riders appeared, their silhouettes sharp against the moonlight, Naya did not flinch. She had spent her life running from hunters, from killers, from men who believed that her silence could be bought or broken. Tonight she would not run. The battle, when it came, was sudden and fierce. Horses screamed, gunfire cracked through the night, and dust and smoke filled the air. Naya moved like a shadow, precise and deadly, using every skill she had honed through years of survival. Ethan covered her, firing when needed, protecting the girl who had become both a mystery and a lifeline. In the chaos, one thing became clear. Whatever came next, they would face it together, bound not only by circumstance but by trust, courage, and a shared will to survive.